Good morning. What an introduction, huh? 5 most powerful women in Austin. I hope I don't disappoint you this morning. It's great to be here in Provo, and I want to talk to you today about economic development. Sorry, this thing is sensitive, y'all. Okay, well, here we go. All right, economic development in Provo. For the last year, so Avalanche Consulting, my firm, is a national economic development strategic planning firm. We work with communities across the country on evaluating their economies and determining a good path forward for economic development. And for the last year, we've been working with Provo City on crafting an economic development strategy for Provo City. The first economic development strategy that Provo City has had, and we've involved a lot of people from around the community. Over 300 people have been involved in the strategic planning process. Did you guys know that that was going on in the community? I see some steering committee members here. Can you raise your hand? Thank you to everyone who's been involved. This is a perfect timing for this conference. Looking out 50 years, our strategic plans kind of take it 5 years at a time. So this is a 5-year strategy for Provo City, but they're kind of like stair steps building you up to that 50-year vision, and we took that into consideration as we were doing our strategy. So for the next few minutes, what I want to do is go over a few of the findings of that strategy and point you to the strategy so that you can learn more about the direction that your city is taking for economic development. There isn't a day that goes by when Provo isn't listed in some national ranking. We track this stuff, and every day our research managers forward me some new article where Provo is on top, sometimes even beating out our own hometown of Austin, Texas. Yesterday, in fact, Provo was ranked the most flirtiest city in the U.S. Did you know that? The flirtiest city in the U.S. Most of the time it's business rankings, though, but keep on flirting. But as you can see, these are just a few of the headlines. I mean, when I did a search on Provo rankings, it was pages and pages and pages of rankings and things that you've been mentioned in the last year or two. And this matters, okay? So from an economic development perspective, as companies are looking for a place to locate or expand into, this stuff they pay attention to. They're looking at these rankings. It's building awareness of Provo as a business destination. Companies tend to want to locate in places where other companies are thriving. They cluster together. So the more of these rankings that you appear in, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Your rankings go up because of job growth and company growth, and all other companies pay attention to that, and then they move in here. So this is a theme you're going to hear throughout this conference, I suspect, is growth. What are you doing to prepare for the growth that is heading your way? What are you doing to anticipate that growth? There's a group called America 2050. Have you ever seen these emerging regions maps? Emerging mega regions, they track demographic trends and growth within metro areas across the U.S., and they're kind of forecast out that growth, and they identify what they call mega regions. But these are areas where massive metro areas kind of grow to the point where they're overlapping in boundaries and they're blurring together. You can see the Northeast there. That's not surprising for anyone who's traveled up there. We do a lot of work in Florida and that whole Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, Gainesville. Population starting to grow together in between those communities, and it's becoming a mega region. The Austin, San Antonio, Dallas corridor, it's all one big mess of billboards and people right now, and it's only going to increase. But what I want to show you is this. What is that? That's you guys, identified as an emerging mega region. Would you ever think that you were considered a mega region? By 2050, a mega region here. So this isn't just something that you're seeing locally and talking about locally. Nationally, people are paying attention to this region as an emerging mega region, from Ogden down to Provo and south, where you're seeing so much growth right now. So your mega region, these are all things I want to instill in you a sense of urgency about economic development and planning and doing smart things now, because 2050, 2060 isn't that long from now. That's what your children are going to inherit. When your children are your age, they're going to be sitting in this region, right? So Utah County's population is projected to grow 134% through 2050, even more through 2060, 50 years from now. So from about 500,000 people to 1.2 million people. What does it look like when you put another Utah County on top of Utah County? doubling your county. What do you look like at that point? And what are you doing now to make sure you have the infrastructure in place and your economy is geared up to really provide the wealth and tax base that you need to support that population? Sorry. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, here we go. So, and as the previous speaker pointed out, the population that's predicted to grow the fastest is the 60-year-old and older population. Okay, that's expected to almost quadruple through 2050. So what does that mean in terms of what we're investing in terms of infrastructure, in healthcare, in housing? What does that look like? Something to consider right now. And when I think of, so we looked at the other emerging mega regions, and you think of a place like in Florida or in Texas, there's really no geographic limitations to the sprawl of those. I'm from Houston originally. It can sprawl for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and there's nothing to stop it. So, okay. But here, I think about this region in terms of a vice grip, right? You've got these geographic restrictions, the mountains, the water, more mountains. This narrow corridor, you're talking about putting another county on top of your county in the next 40 years. 2 Provos in Provo. What does that mean in terms of what you're doing now? 2 Provos in Provo. Okay, so are you ready for that? And that was part of the point of this economic development strategic planning process that we went through. To figure out, okay, we know this is coming up 40 to 50 years from now, but what do we do over the next 5 years to take us do smart things now, to take us 5 years ahead towards accomplishing that longer-term vision? And what is that longer-term vision? We want to have a community that's incredibly high quality, like we have today, even better than we have today. Right? We want to leave that legacy for our children and our families. We want to have businesses here that pay high wages so that we can prosper and continue to generate wealth throughout our community. And we want to make sure that we have a tax base that's long-term going to provide the kind of revenue that our city and our county needs to ensure that our quality of life assets are invested in, they're strengthened. They've got the funding needed to make sure that our schools are as good as they can possibly be, that our roadways are as good as possibly be. So we're looking at what can we do with our corporate tax base? What can we do to bring in jobs to our community that pay high wages and make sure that our population can thrive long term? So are we ready? The strategic plan, I encourage you to visit the website provostrategy.com if you haven't been there yet. 2 out of the 3 reports in the strategy are already online. Our competitive assessment, which looks at your economy and public input that we received, and a SWOT analysis on what your current strengths and challenges are. There's also a document in there that talks about your target audiences for economic development, so we don't have a shotgun approach to economic development. We're really honing in on a handful of industries that are going to catalyze economic growth. So the target industry report is on there, and we're in the final steps of finalizing the strategy. And that'll be online in the next few weeks. So a few things I just want to end with, a few thoughts for you, what I'm calling musts. Excuse me. First thing, there's a lot of recommendations in the strategy, but these are themes that I feel like we need to continue the dialogue around today. When you're talking about growth, you want to focus on dense vertical growth. And that might seem odd right now in the next 5 years, that when you're building a building, that you're going up, and it might stand out like a sore thumb for a while, but it has to be that way because of your geographic restrictions. 30, 40 years from now, you're going to be glad that you're growing up. You're thinking dense. You're thinking high tech. So the investment that's going in on your limited lands is high tech, high wage, high capital investment. Okay. Second, regional collaboration. Most communities I work in across the country have a regional economic development organization that represents the region and markets a region nationally and internationally to businesses. And that's something I was surprised I didn't find here when it came to the region. We have the state does a wonderful job marketing the state, but who do you have representing your region? And also, how are you collaborating? Because your neighbors in the county are going to experience the same thing you are. What are we doing to work together? Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. A targeted approach, as I've said, making sure that you're not going after everything out there, but you're targeted. High quality of life investments, and making sure that what you're educating for now is what your industries of the future need. Okay, as I'm losing my voice, thank you so much, Linda. Just want to end with a great quote. Let's stop worrying about what happened yesterday and start thinking about tomorrow. And this conference is a perfect example of what I wish communities across the country were doing. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and I look forward to visiting with you after the speakers. And I'm sorry about my voice. Thank you.